Hey folks, and welcome to another SpikeBoarding tutorial demo. Today we're going to show climbing with the CUBI-X-CROSS stroke. And if you're new to SpikeBoarding and you've never heard of it, what you're seeing here is an athlete that is engaging waist up exactly the same way as cross-country skiers have for many a year. And of course, from the waist down, you're seeing an athlete kick traditionally as skateboard riders have kicked for a very long time. We are switch kicking. That's the bottom part of the CUBI-X-CROSS connected to a Nordic upper body spike at the same time. Notice how the arms are staying at 90 degrees, and we'll go over more of that as we get into this. But first, just get the formalities of where we are and what we're about to do. We're about to climb not the biggest mountain on earth, but certainly there's going to be a little bit of a hard effort. I think this turns into about a 35-40 minute effort perhaps. In CUBI-X-CROSS we're going to climb the Shawangunks here that are right in front of the athlete, and behind us is New Paltz, and of course headed up this climb we're going to a little town called High Falls, New York, and that's what we're going to do. The athlete is holding a skateboard spike. A skateboard spike is the relative of a ski pole, but notice that alternating hand action is available to the spikeboarder because there is no strap and commitment to having a fixed connection. So because there is no strap, the skateboard spike has been uniquely designed, and when you buy one and you own one, you will understand why it's uniquely designed, because you will discover the performance that it delivers. It delivers a great deal of performance, and very little power and energy is lost during the transmission of hand to spike and through to the pavement. So essentially, from the handle, the grip and the handle down on a skateboard spike, it is a pretty beefy ski pole, and at the bottom end, at the footing that is engaging with that pavement, is a carbide spike tip, and that spike tip is the same one that roller skiers, Olympic cross-country skiers, the world's best World Cup skiers, college skiers up at Dartmouth, the best skiing team in college in the country, they use that same little tip. And of course, New Paltz High School, they've been skiing for years, and Kingston also High School has a little bit of roller skiing. So when those people roller ski, they use the same exact carbide spike tip that is on that skateboard spike. But from the handle up, things are very different. And of course, the skateboard spike allows for this CUBI-X-CROSS one-armed action, and when you get one you'll understand why. And also it allows for stand-up spike, and throughout this climb there will be a few brief moments, and we will mention it, where we connect into the stand-up spike stroke for just a little reprieve for the legs, and you'll see how well the skateboard spike functions for stand-up spike as well. If you have not seen our other videos, please dial into them and look for stand-up spike, stand-up mountains, and King of Mountain and Queen of Mountain, and the stand-up spike stroke. We've gone up some big stuff in the country, some of the biggest, sometimes the biggest summits there are in the states that we visit, and we stand up spike them to demonstrate how effective the skateboard spike is. So up we go. We've got a pretty good road, wouldn't you say? The pavement is pretty nice here, and let's just discuss open road spikeboarding a little bit before we go any further. And that is that your main responsibility as an endurance athlete out on open roads is being safe to those around you. So you have no business whatsoever going into areas where you cannot remain in complete control of both your skateboard spike and your board at all times. If you do not have advanced skill sets, you cannot go out onto open road like this, and you need to stay on roads that are far less traveled, and also perhaps paved rail trails, or even open parking lots and things of that kind. So we are being filmed by a bicycle, and bicycles have been riding these open roads for many years, and we are occupying a shoulder width distance on the side of the road, the same as a bicycle would. So that's what's holding the camera, folks, and so we're just slipping in their slipstream right behind them. So with all those formalities out of the way, I guess a few more might be in order, and that is, of course, this is endurance athletics, and you do need proper hydration, folks, and you need proper calorie in and calorie out, and you also need the right food. So look into eating clean if you haven't already, and understand also that when you're going to work, you're going to need a little bit of carbohydrate, a little extra carbohydrate. You're certainly going to need proper hydration and replacing electrolyte and things of that kind. This athlete was topped off completely with hydration before, and will receive significant hydration at the moment that they finish this climb. So don't go out doing this stuff without that. And of course, I guess if you're new, completely new to endurance athletics, go get yourself checked out by a doctor, cardiologist, make sure you can run your ticker. So let's get into this stroke and how it functions. I suppose first of all, you should understand that this athlete has been SpikeBoarding and CUBI-X-CROSSing for the last 8 years. But mind you, it isn't the only sport that he's been participating in. He's also been roller skiing for the last 3 years, on and off intermittently, and of course had a base, a very high base, heart and lung, that was developed over 12 years of pro-am bike racing and an additional 6 or 7 years of just recreational riding to a high level, a great deal of speed skating, inline skating, and of course just switch kicking without a spike, shorter distances, and a great deal of performance scootering as well as swimming, and a lot of competitive flat water stand-up paddle as well. Alright guys, so now let's get into the stroke, because we're really seeing some very specific things that are going on. So why don't we go ahead and take a look at the arms. So when there's an empty arm, when the arm is not holding the spike, just take a look at the angle of that elbow. Those arms aren't extending out at all. Notice how those arms are just staying at 90 degrees. So you don't want to extend out the arm too far when you're in repose and you're resting. That's a rest on that left arm before it's going to grab that skateboard spike, because then you just keep it in the same angle that it needs to be, because in effect we are not using the tricep and the bicep. Sure, they're getting engaged, but the arms in spikeboarding and in cross-country skiing should be considered a heck of a lot more like the chain on a bicycle. It's just mechanically, it's part of the transmission from where the greatest amount of power is coming from, and that would be your core and your lats and your lower back is what going to develop a tremendous amount of power for you. And so the arms remain at 90 degrees, and you have to consciously keep them at 90 degrees. Look, it almost looks as if the athlete has like metal pins in there, and the steeper it gets, the steeper climbs get, the more you really need to remain at 90 degrees in those arms. Notice how short these strokes are. The idea in hill climbing is to maintain a rolling speed. You don't want to be dropping, accelerating, decelerating, accelerating, decelerating. You want to save your rolling speed. So don't try to kill it on every stroke. Just take tiny little strokes, and your power phase should be short, and your return should be snappy. Your return should be snappy for your arms as well as for your legs. So when we pull back just a little bit, you'll begin to notice, there you go, as we switch, we're also drifting forward, and that is going to allow for the athlete to be in a little more relaxed position. If you can kick from the front, you're going to be a little more relaxed than from the rear, and what you want to do is find that perfect speed at which you can still put in a great deal of effort, but at the same time allow yourself to drift forward. So notice how the athlete is drifting at the same time that he spikes. So if he's at the rear, then he'll start to drift when he spikes, and then sometimes there will be no drift. If no drift is happening, it's because there is so much effort that's being made that just the effort to scooch forward to the front is outweighed by just staying put and sucking up kicking from the rear. And kicking from the rear isn't that much more taxing, but if you can get yourself to the front, then it is going to help. But also there's other reasons for which you may not drift constantly all the time to the front, and they might just be for senses of rhythm, or perhaps you might be enjoying having one leg at the rear steady. So as you can see, when you do drift, then the knees will all be affected, because kicking from the front and from the back, they change. So if I kick from the back with my left leg, and when I kick from the front with my left leg, believe it or not, all of the knee structure, all of that is completely affected. So at times there might be a twinge in a knee or something like that. That might be a reason that an athlete doesn't do that. So things are going to continue to get steeper and steeper on this climb. We're actually going to get to a point where we may come to close to zero. So we actually did this climb without a lot of reconnaissance on it. We didn't know it all that well. We did know it wasn't very big, but we didn't know exactly where the crux point was. So as in all things, endurance, and let's just use cycling as an example. Years ago, people weren't that used to suffering, so to speak, up a big climb and granny gears, and now everyone understands. You get on a bike, you put in a granny gear, and you're going to pedal up as fast or as slow as you can, but certainly you are going to make it to the top if you don't stop. So don't focus on speed so much as just constant steady rhythm and not losing your rolling speed. You want to maintain your rolling speed. That's what's most important. And also, of course, you need to maintain your cardiovascular function so you don't detonate and explode. And in this sport, very similar to running and very similar to cross-country skiing, you must monitor it a great deal more than in cycling. In cycling, you're sitting on a bicycle and you have a little more room to wiggle, so to speak. So you can drive the motor a heck of a lot harder because you have something to sit on, and your feet and your arms and even your rump are all registered to something that's fixed, and therefore you're not going to have to worry all that much about your technique. In skiing, in spikeboarding, in inline skating, and in speed skating, swimming especially. Swimming, you're just floating around in water, and it's all technique. You really need to know where your elbows are and your feet are, and if your technique goes out the window because you failed to be able to concentrate on it, or you blew up, then forget it. You're going to lose time like crazy. And this sport is the same deal, folks. So you must stay in a steady rhythm and focus on staying relaxed and monitoring your output for the effort slowly. And people pass you, or they accelerate past you, you've got to let them go. You must climb at your own speed. Absolutely. So I think today was a Sunday here, so as you can see, the road's not super populated with a lot of cars, and when they do come up, they pass us the same as they would pass any cyclist. And you might be wondering, well, how on earth do cross-country skiers and spikeboarders, how do they get off these mountains? And you may have heard that longboarders, downhill, all this stuff. Look, we're not longboarders, and we're not going to go down this summit flying in Lycra radically because that's just not the sport. But roller skiers, when they come up this high in elevation, they don't go skiing back down either. What they do is they keep their speed in check. on slower loops, high side, low side loops, and when they come to big stuff like this, they just get picked up at the top with a car, or I guess they could jump on a tandem bike. And what we're going to do is we are using a flat bar road bike with some great disc brakes, and we are just going to do something called velo spiking, which when you've got a cycle and it's got disc brakes, well, then you can just come down the hill and no problem, put your hand on the back of the cycling athlete, and they're going to break both of you. So that's how we got back down this summit. Very simply, safely, in unison with a bicycle, keeping our speed in check, probably not doing much more than about 28 miles an hour all the way down, and that was no problem at all. So folks, velo spiking is going to be a lovely sport, a delicious sport, and all that it is, it's multisport 2.0. Multisport 1.0 is run, bike, swim. We all know that. It's a dedication to those three performance sports and executing them very well. And velo spiking will just be a dedication to performance cycling as well as spikeboarding, but in tandem with a friend and a training partner. Boy, velo spiking is just delightful. So if you've got a partner who is the same size as you, then you can just switch bikes, switch boards, get down hills. Everybody can get crazy good workouts the whole time. There was the connector stroke, and we're going into some connectors here. There's the stand-up spike stroke, and of course this is starting to flatten out a little bit, and you realize that because we're picking up some pretty good speed here. We're still climbing just a little bit. We're going to take a little respite for the legs, and when you can take a little respite, you do, and that means go into stand-up spike. So very similar, like skiers would go into a double pole situation, and it might not be so much for a respite as it is that you may be able to go faster with your upper body only, same as in skiing. You get to a point where double poling is the best option because your legs can't keep up. So here we go, we're starting to get a little vertical again, and bang, here comes a little bit more of a wall, and out goes the speed, and time to climb. So time to relax, time to climb. And as you can see, that's where the forward drift is really going to help quite a bit. There's the forward drift, and that really helps when you're climbing steep stuff. And we have gotten to quite the wall right here, and literally on our switch we're reduced down to a 0 mile per hour sort of situation where you have to relax. This kind of climbing really heats up the quadriceps, as you might imagine. So the quadriceps and the glutes are heating up pretty darn good, and there's not much you can do when things get vertical other than relax, pull in the drift, and let your foot fly straight into that drop. And that's why the SpikeBoard really works very, very well, because we do drift, and not many boards, well, there's no board in the world really that is this long and has that amount of drop. That's a full 3 inches of drop. It was very easy to catch the board, manipulate the board, and stand on this board because of that drop situation. And of course the fenders are covered as well. A little bit of crocodile on the pavement there, and to cover that stuff you just need to relax, stay a little lighter on the board, and let it float over. Try to keep the spike tip out of those crocodile cracks. If you feel it going in, try not to put too much pressure. The spikes don't like those crevices. You could break one off, and you don't want to do that. Obviously they're replaceable, but midfield's a little bit annoying to replace them. Now the speed's picking up a little bit, and that little section is gone. That little vert wall section, we're going to start picking up some speed there, and that is the biggest crux that you're going to have on your way up to the top of High Falls. Again, have a look at that arm without the spike. It's just sitting there at 90 degrees and just relaxed, just like a piece of machinery, waiting for that skateboard spike toss to come over. That spike toss just tosses silicone to silicone. Those hands are not touching that carbon fiber shaft at all. So that toss is happening mid-chest and just casually, and you can see it's just automatic. The athlete has done it so many times that the spike toss is just automatic, straight and over. What's most important during that toss is that there's a registration in the navigation of the pilot, obviously of the of the operator's mind that the tip has crossed over onto the other side. It has cleared the fender and it's up and over, and you realize that, and you need to register that in your mind every time the spike goes over. You cannot hastily want to spike instantly, because you're going to end up spiking the board, or spiking the fender, or spiking your wheels. Rarely will you spike your feet, but if you spike your board, you're going to come off your board, and that's never a happy day. So every time that spike comes around, you need to register in your mind, does the spike over? Does it come around? When it has, then you can put the power into it. Well, folks, we're getting close to the top here. We're seeing the golf course, and we're going to summit this. It's going to be a nice feeling. There's a little respite, little stand-up spike right there. As we come toward the top, there's going to be a little bridge, and that's where we will finalize this. So I don't have the time code right in front of me here, but I think it's about 20 minutes or so. And kind of a small climb, but still, you've seen a great climb in CUBI-X-CROSS, folks. Hope you've enjoyed it. Spike hard, spike often, SpikeBoarding, and we will see you at the next one.